80 years to the date of being killed in action in World War II, Leesburg native U.S. Army Air Force Staff Sergeant Franklin P. Hall is being laid to rest in his hometown at Lone Oak Cemetery, and his family, after all these years of him being unaccounted for, finally have the answers about their uncle's passing. I'm Tony Camus reporting for Lakefront TV on this hometown hero tribute to a veteran who has served his country and gave his all. As a funeral director here at Byers Funeral Home, we are pleased and humbled and honored to be part of this very special story. Staff Sergeant Franklin P. Hall was just 21 years old when he died. In January 1944, he was assigned to the 66th Bombardment Squadron, 44th Bombardment Group in the European Theater. On January 21, Hall was a left waist gunner on board a B-24D Liberator named the Queen Marlene when it was attacked and shot down by German air forces near France. German forces quickly found the crash site and recovered 9 sets of remains, which were then interred in the French cemetery at Port-de-Picardy. Staff Sergeant Hall's remains were not accounted for after the war. Later, his remains were moved to the Normandy American Cemetery in France. In 2018, his remains were moved again to Offutt Air Force Base in Oklahoma to begin his identification process. After 80 years of waiting, Hall's nephew, Jeffrey Hester, now has answers about his uncle's passing. Hall's remains were identified by the Defense POW MIA Accounting Agency on July 13, 2023.
Franklin was shot down in a bomber in 1944, January 21st, 1944. I wasn't born yet. I was not born until 53. So I heard throughout my life that are they going to ever find him? What's going on? Are they working on it? Nobody really knew. And actually, my mother knew that in 1951 he was declared unrecoverable. But they still questioned it, and they still wanted to know. And it was quite, to me as a kid and growing up, it was just one of those things. You know, you just hear in passing at different family gatherings and stuff all the time.
Jeffrey Hester shared that his family meticulously kept documents related to his uncle from over the years, including his diploma from Leesburg High School, his original Purple Heart certificate, and the original Western Union telegraph sent to his mother in 1944 notifying her of the crash and her son being missing in action. It was in 2017 that the Army reached out to Jeffrey Hester and his brother for DNA samples. He said he figured something would come from that phone call. Scientists from the Defense POW MIA Accounting Agency used anthropological analysis to identify Hall's remains.
They needed a DNA sample, and I thought, okay, I can do that. And then they contacted my brother, and he said, yeah, we can do that. And so we sent it in, and by golly, things started happening. Science moved in, and they set up, shortly, not too long after that, they set up a meeting with me and showed me evidence. And it's an 85-page document that showed that he was actually and truly found. I mean, through the bones that were transported from France and moved to a different location in France and then to Normandy and placed in X-graves, which were unknowns. And the investigation commenced again, and they identified him. Already been knocking on graves. His parents are buried over in Adamsville, just right over here in Sumter County, and his grandparents are in Leesburg. And I've already been banging on graves, so. And his mother, and his sister too, so. It's very overwhelming, but that's one of the things you think about is you wish they could know. And that's all I can say, I just wish you could know. And I think you can know, I think you do know. His final resting place will be at Lone Oak Cemetery, and he will be buried next to his grandparents with full military honors.
Through continued long-term research and discovery efforts by the Defense POW MIA Accounting Agency and the American Battle Monuments Commission, Staff Sergeant Hall's remains were identified in 2023. Surviving family members chose to return him to his native city, and he would be laid to rest in Lone Oak Cemetery in Leesburg, Florida on January 21st, 2024 at 3 p.m., 80 years to the day and almost to the minute that his aircraft was shot down. We are honored to now present the Heroes Highway Welcome Home Procession and Services for Leesburg native U.S. Army Air Force Staff Sergeant Franklin Hall.
time, please rise for the firing party and the playing with taps.
Staff Sergeant Franklin Hall, welcome home. Good afternoon, family and friends. I'm Chaplain Lance Sellen. It's a deep privilege for me to be with you today as we gather to remember and celebrate the life and service of Staff Sergeant Franklin Hall. Jesus said, "I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live even though they die. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end, the first and the last. I died, and behold, I live forever, and hold the keys of hell and death. Because I live, you will live also." We join together to honor Staff Sergeant Franklin Hall, who gave the last full measure of devotion to this nation. May God grant us grace, that in pain we may find comfort, in sorrow we may find hope, and in death we may find resurrection. Please join me in prayer. God of all, your love never ends. When everything we depend on fails, you do not. We pray for each other and everyone anywhere who mourns with us today. To those who doubt, give your light. To those who are weak, give your strength. To all who have trespassed, give your mercy. And to all who grieve, give your peace. bolster the love with which we hold on to one another. In all our ways, we trust you. God of grace, thank you for family and friends who have finished life's journey and now rest eternal. We name them silently before you. Especially we thank you for Franklin, whom you have graciously received into your presence. Also, lead us through our years and reunite us with him and you and all those who have gone before us. As first you gave Franklin to us, we now give him back to you. We praise you for receiving him into your merciful arms and raising him into eternity with your people. Receive us also and raise us into a new life. Empower us to love you and serve our neighbor, the widow, the orphan, and the stranger until we join you in the great celebration of the age to come. We pray this in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. For many, it is an honor to become a soldier, and even a greater honor still that at the end of life to be remembered as one. For it is the bold who commit their life to sharpening their skills, focusing their efforts, and wearing the uniform that one day ventures off with other soldiers, guardsmen, sailors, Marines. Side by side, upholding and defending the ideals of freedom, though it may cost them their lives. Theirs is a legacy passed from soldier to soldier. Staff Sergeant Franklin P. Hall was born on April 13, 1922, in the then small town of Leesburg, Florida. He graduated from Leesburg High School, which was quite an accomplishment in 1941, considering only 50% of 18-year-olds graduated high school. He entered into the U.S. Army on August 8, 1941, and completed basic training at Camp Landing in Stark, Florida. He entered the U.S. Army Air Corps and was assigned to the 66th Bombardment Squadron, 44th Bombardment Group Heavy, known as the Flying Eight Balls, in the European theater during World War II. He courageously served aboard the Queen Marlene as the left waist gunner as part of his crew of 10 on their B-24 Liberator. Historians at the Defense POW MIA Accounting Agency that report that on 21 January 1944, 80 years ago today, Staff Sergeant Hall was killed in action during a mission to destroy a V-1 rocket factory in Ecas-sur-Bouchy, France. Staff Sergeant Hall's aircraft was one of 28 planes in formation that day. Just after bombing the target, the Queen Marlene was attacked by a German fighter aircraft and crashed at Aix-en-Maricourt, France. Only one crewman survived the crash. German forces gathered and interred Staff Sergeant Hall in the French cemetery at Poix-de-Picardy. The War Department classified Staff Sergeant Hall as missing in action as of 21 January 1944. Staff Sergeant Hall and most of his generation have gone. Much of what we know about him is a reflection of what we know about that generation. His childhood was spent during America's roaring 20s, followed by a coming age of rigors during the Great Depression. Upon graduation, Franklin, along with 16 million American men, joined the military, while the remaining 116 million Americans at home mobilized to fight the war at home through shared sacrifice and the building of our industrial might. We rightly refer to Staff Sergeant Hall's generation as the greatest generation. From before the day Franklin was born, God created Franklin in God's own image. For men who have seen tough days, experienced hard times, witnessed the darkness and traumas and destruction of war, we make a delicate yet determined peace with God. God knows each of our struggles, each of our traumas, and bears them with us. In Jesus Christ, we see God who enters the hurts, heartaches, and traumas of life and bears them with us. Franklin is with God. God continues to be with us today. God will carry us through the days ahead. Like Staff Sergeant Hall, may you discover the purpose of a life that is lived selflessly, that loves family, serves others, and courageously advance his light into the darkness. Let us remember Staff Sergeant Hall this way and honor his life with how we live our own. Take comfort in this reading of Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I do not want. You make me lie down in green pastures and lead me beside quiet waters. You restore my soul. You guide me in paths of righteousness for your name's sake. And even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Jesus said, I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live, even though they die. I died, and look, I live forever, and I hold the keys of hell and death. Because I live, you will live also. In his death, Christ destroyed our death, and in his resurrection, Christ restored our life. The age to come has not yet been revealed, but we know that when Christ returns, we will be like him. In the sure and certain hope of the resurrection of the eternal life through Jesus Christ our Lord, please pray with me. We commend our brother Franklin to the Almighty God as we commit his body to rest in the earth to earth, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Amen.
I am Dennis Baxley, and I'm a fifth-generation Floridian. My grandfather was born here in Lake County, and it's wonderful to be able to come and stand with you, let you know that the Florida Senate and I, as your senator, we share in this special day. Thank you for sharing this day of recognition. It's already been mentioned today, but what I see here is the greatest generation and their impact into every life. Every one of us are here because they stood firm when duty called. And we received that call. I'm also very proud of our military. If it takes 80 years, no one will be left behind. And for his remains to be returned here, it's a sign of completion that I hope you can embrace. And it's my honor to bring a message of sharing this grief with you, but also a great amount of respect for what this says about you, your family, and especially you're a member of the greatest generation. God bless you.
I know members of the family. We actually went to high school together. One of the things I had in common with Sergeant Hall is I'm a Leesburg High School graduate. A member of this community for more years than I'm willing to admit. But although my wife's a true native, she still calls me a semi-native because I only moved here when I was 15. So, but what I have in common with Staff Sergeant Franklin Hall is family in a different way. You see, my parents were members of the greatest generation. My father was a crew chief on B-25 during World War II. And by whatever circumstance, shortly after being wounded, he came home, met my mother, and that's why I'm here today. So it's the World War II touched everyone's life in many, many ways. And it's because of heroes like Franklin Hall that you have to always remember. You heard the statistics about World War II. 16 million people in uniform, half of the population. And the other half was heavily involved. I mean, that's where we get Rosie the Riveter from and all those things that this country mobilized to defeat fascism so that we could have the freedoms that we have today. You see, it is the soldier, not the reporter, who has given us freedom of the press. It is the soldier, not the poet, who has given us freedom of speech. It is the soldier, not the organizer, who gave us the freedom to demonstrate. It is the soldier who salutes the flag, who serves beneath the flag, and whose coffin is draped by the flag, who allows us, the protesters, to burn the flag. I say that with all reverence to the gentleman that we're honoring here today, because of his legacy shows what a great community this is made up. Just look around. And I want to reach out to the riders of the Patriot Guard who are here today. One of my duties as a general officer was to present the flag to soldiers killed in combat. Toughest duty I had. And I commanded soldiers in combat, but that was the toughest duty I ever had. So thank you, each and every one of you, for being here and honoring this family and honoring this great soldier who gave us the freedoms that we have today. Thank you.
This is a message from Congressman Webster for you, your family. Dear family and staff, dear family of Staff Sergeant Franklin P. Hall, it is my pleasure to join you and our community in honoring a local American hero, United States Army Air Force Staff Sergeant Franklin P. Hall. The spirit of the American soldier stands tall throughout history. Staff Sergeant Hall made the last full measure of devotion in service to our nation. It is due to soldiers like him and many other countless lives selflessly lived and lost in defense of our country that we have the privilege to stand today free and grateful. Let us all take the challenge to raise up a generation of individuals with the same sense of courage, fortitude, and spirit to serve their country and fellow mankind as Staff Sergeant Hall. After more than half a century, it is my privilege to join you and our community in finally welcoming home Staff Sergeant Franklin P. Hall. May God bless you, and may God bless the United States of America. Your servant, Daniel Webster. Thank you.
It is indeed an honor for me to be here. As the mayor of Leesburg, we welcome home Staff Sergeant Hall. Whereas through the history of these United States of America, an untold number of men and women have stepped forth with honor to defend the freedoms that set our country apart from every other in the world. And whereas U.S. Army Air Force Staff Sergeant Franklin P. Hall was born in Leesburg, Florida on April 13, 1922, to parents Herbert and Hilda Hall. He graduated from Leesburg High School and entered the U.S. Army Air Force on August the 8th, 1941 at Fort Blanding in Stark, Florida. And whereas Staff Sergeant Hall was assigned to the 66th Bombardment Squadron, 44th Bombardment Group Heavy in the European Theater, as a left waist gunner on board the B-24D Liberator Queen Marlene. When his plane was attacked by German forces in France on January 21st, 1944, and he was killed in action. And whereas Staff Sergeant Hall's remains, along with those of other crew members, were recovered by German forces and interned in a cemetery in France, where they remained for decades, Sergeant Hall was not accounted for after the war and was officially declared non-recoverable on March 1st, 1951. And whereas through continued long-term research and discovery efforts by the Defense POW/MIA Accounting Agency and the American Battle Monuments Commission, Staff Sergeant Hall's remains were identified in 2023. He is returned to his native city and laid to rest here at Lone Oak Cemetery in Leesburg on January 21st, 2024, 80 years to the date his aircraft was shot down. And whereas on behalf of a grateful nation, our entire community is proud to welcome home Staff Sergeant Franklin P. Hall, a valiant airman from the greatest generation who rendered the ultimate sacrifice for his country. Now therefore, I, James A. Burry Jr., the Mayor of Leesburg, do hereby proclaim January 21st, 2024 as Staff Sergeant Franklin P. Hall Day and encourage all citizens to join me in this worthy observance. Thank you.
Next, we will have a presentation from the Patriot Guard Riders who did an outstanding job in escorting us today.
And I would also like to congratulate the flag from the Patriot Guard and the members of the Army. I'll give you the box to go.
Final presentation that I have on my agenda, I would like to read to the family and those of you present. Addressed to Mr. Jeff Hester and family. Dear Jeff and family, I recently learned about a long-awaited homecoming of your uncle and World War II hero, Army Air Force Staff Sergeant Franklin Hall. Melania and I send our deepest condolences to you and your family. At just 21 years old, Staff Sergeant Hall represented the very best of our great nation. His steadfast service as a gunner in the United States Army Air Force during World War II is worthy of every American's admiration. I know you must feel great pride in his heroic legacy and honor in preserving his memory for future generations of your family. I wanted to let you know that I will never forget his ultimate sacrifice and his unwavering efforts to defend freedom and uphold liberty far from home. His bravery will forever be part of the America's story, and we are eternally grateful for his devotion. We also applaud the incredible work by the personnel at Offutt Air Force Base and the POW MIA Accounting Agency to identify and repatriate your uncle's remains and bring comfort and closure to your family and so many others whose loved ones have been missing in action. You will remain in our thoughts and prayers as Staff Sergeant Franklin Hall is buried in his hometown of Leesburg with full military honors, 80 years to the day, and I might add almost to the minute, of his tremendous loss. May he rest in eternal peace, and may God bless you and keep you always. Sincerely, Donald J. Trump, 45th President of the United States. I'm going to ask Mr. Roger Byers, owner, President of Byers Funeral Home, to come forward and to close this out.
Last night was a opportunity that I couldn't pass up. Lee Greenwood was singing at the Orange Blossom Opry, and I asked him if he would recognize Staff Sergeant Hall for his song, his last song that he sang, and he did so in recognizing Jeff and other family members who were present there last night. As you know, his patriotic singing and songs that he does was exceptional, and would like to add that as part of what was represented in the honoring of Staff Sergeant Hall. At this time, this does conclude the services here at the cemetery. We'd like to ask everyone to keep the family in their thoughts and prayers in the coming days, weeks, and months. It doesn't end here. This is an opportunity that the community has come together and shown their support for patriotism, shown their support for a veteran, and a long overdue of bringing someone home to rest. For that, the family thanks you. I thank you. All the armed forces thank you for being present here today.
What does this mean for the community? You saw the hundreds and hundreds of people here, the support from the community down to the lowest level, the Patriot Guard, the Legion Riders. I mean, just to pull this off, to recognize a soldier killed in combat 80 years to the day is a major feat, which speaks to the patriotism of the Leesburg community. This community had the support all the way to the governor's office to lower the flags, to get around some protocols, so to speak, to recognize this great soldier, which is an accomplishment in and of itself because the community pulled together and made it happen. The military, we say, will always bring them home, and we did that today.
Well, if Uncle Franklin was here, I would tell him that it was just absolutely unbelievable what he did for this country. He gave his life for this country, and we all thank him for that. None of us knew back then what it really meant, and it means a lot more today when we look back and look forward to what it really meant. What I actually did to celebrate Uncle Franklin is I have 2 kids, 2 boys. They're now 35 and 33. My youngest, 33 now, I actually named after Uncle Franklin. His name is Jeffrey Pierce, and Franklin, the P in Franklin Pierce, their P is for Pierce. So I actually named my youngest son after Uncle Franklin. So I remember him every day.
How am I feeling? Well, I can say it. I'm really feeling overwhelmed. It's just, and I'm feeling honored to get to do this, and I'm feeling amazed. The whole experience has been fantastic. It's, you know, in a way contrary to a lot of funeral situations and things, this has been to me more than just a closure. It's been an awakening or a real sense of honor and patriotism throughout the community here. We had the opportunity to put him at the National Cemetery, and I did a little research, found a place next to his grandparents, believe it or not, in Lone Oak here, and it's brought the military here into this community, into patriotism, and it's just been wonderful. It really has. What his legacy means to me in this Leesburg community, I would say thank you, Uncle Franklin. Thank you. You're bringing people together. You're just continuing this. You're giving real substance to the fact that the government, the community, the Americans are still trying to bring back fallen servicemen, and we will get it done. I want to know who I have to pay to get to do this. It's such an honor. It really is. That's it. I need to pay somebody to get to do this. The government covered the cost of this funeral and of course the investigation and all that. But what you're looking at here is a tremendous volunteer involvement with these groups of veterans out here. And they're the ones that paid. They're the ones that paid with their lives. They've paid with lost ones. It's just to honor them.
Our community is proud to welcome home Staff Sergeant Franklin P. Hall, a valiant airman from the greatest generation who rendered the ultimate sacrifice for his country. Hall's name is recorded at the tablets of the missing at Ardennes American Cemetery of France, along with others still missing from World War II. A rosette will be placed next to his name to indicate that he has finally been accounted for.